There was another option that also blew through, which was Joe Rogan reached out and said he would host down in Texas. I've already said my one thing is I'm not traveling for this.
You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
All right, so as I covered the other day, this creep grifter guy, Andrew Wilson, went on Joe Rogan's platform to talk about really a bunch of random stuff. He has this whole misogynistic rigmarole that he likes to go on. He's like a women shouldn't vote, you know, kind of fake trad masculine type of dude. But him and Rogan didn't really talk about that at all. What did come up was Charlie Kirk, because he believes that Candace Owens' theories about Charlie Kirk are noxious and bad faith. So he said that, you know, I've offered her all this money to debate and she won't debate me. Basically, in the aftermath of that, she has accepted his terms to debate. They're going to have Patrick Bet-David be the moderator, supposedly, and it's going to take place on Candace's home turf. So they're both saying that the terms of this debate are very unfair to them and more fair to the other person. We'll see if this ends up even happening. Supposedly, Candace Owens has been paid already. So she got paid $300,000 to do this debate, which is kind of nuts. Obviously, someone really wanted to make this happen, and she makes the case that clearly there's some money behind him, that he essentially went to Turning Point USA, their headquarters, she says, and ever since then he's had all this money to put into a debate with her. So here's what she had to say about this upcoming debate, and also revealed, both of them mention the interesting detail that Joe Rogan offered to host the debate as well. So here's that.
I am hoping that this Andrew Wilson thing is going to be like me meeting the final boss of the Real House Bros of Candace County, because that's what this has become. And then all of a sudden, Andrew Wilson has now appeared, and he's their new horse. They're not going to claim him. We're not going to force him to, but we all saw how this went down. He goes to TPUSA headquarters, and suddenly he's got a lot of money to throw around to call Candace out on Piers Morgan and Joe Rogan. And so the public can take from that what they will. What I will say is something that's already annoying me, and I am bending over backward to address, is that he keeps seeding this narrative that he's the underdog somehow, or that this is somehow unfair. I'm also happy that it is PBD, because he will assess and I believe be 100% straightforward with the audience about whether or not I slanted anything against him, whether anything happened in the control room. He will be honest with audiences. And like this tweet from Andrew that he shared. Where do we have the tweet that he said this morning? He keeps caging it as if like he's in the lion's den. We had a call. There was another option that also blew through, which was Joe Rogan reached out and said he would host down in Texas. I've already said my one thing is I'm not traveling for this, so I declined to accept me having to travel down to Texas. And then a PBD offered, and Andrew wanted to make that happen. And I said, okay, I am fine. I'm literally fine as long as a person comes here. We have allowed his moderator. We're giving him our studio, our producers. He will be in control. He picked the moderator. He established the debate claim. We conceded to that. He is officially bringing more people than I have on my team. So actually, I will be underrepresented in my own home when he comes down, because I want this to be a clean victory. I want it to be a final response to these people who have been insisting for months and months and months, oh, all of these conspiracy theorists don't believe in what they believe. They're just saying it because it gives them an audience. No, that's not why we're saying it. We very much believe what we are saying. And I am glad that the debate claim is, one of the claims is him saying the evidence is overwhelming that Tyler Robinson assassinated Charlie Kirk. And my rebuttal, obviously, to that is that Tyler Robinson was set up as a patsy. That's my belief. And I believe that I can defend that. And I don't think that there are many more people who know this case inside and out. I feel like I know this case better than some of the lawyers do, truly. Baron Coleman, perhaps, would be neck and neck with me. If I was debating Baron Coleman on the case and we weren't on the same side, I probably would be like, okay, and he's also a lawyer, like a little bit nervous, right? Because he will have a natural talent for understanding some of the filings where I have to just always check. But I am sued a lot, so I don't know, maybe I'm a little more experienced than Baron Coleman, actually, if we ever have a debate. I'd be like, actually, I'm the most sued ever. Other than the fact that I have asked that it takes place here and he doesn't smoke, I have made no other requests and I have conceded everything to him. And PBD will be honest about that. Like, I've just been like, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. I don't care. I actually am excited to address these points finally. And the idea that anybody would be fearful. I'll tell you what debate rule number 1 is: stake a position that you can actually defend.
Yeah, so Candace is really talented at this rambling thing that she does. I would say she just is good in her cadence in being persuasive. And so she kind of will dance around the point or say a whole bunch of nonsense or kind of like twist herself into a pretzel. And if you're not listening closely, you might not notice because she sounds really confident and entertaining in what she's saying. And you can see she kind of like almost audibly gulps at the end there, talking about how no one's afraid of this debate. And, you know, we'll see. I think that she is not prepared for this debate. I think that she probably could survive it. I think Andrew Wilson is in the power position because he's going to pretty easily come off as the more sane person. Candace, though, is much more talented and much more charismatic than he is. And also, I think in terms of who I would be rooting for in this debate, it would be Candace, because what Andrew Wilson wants to do is he is frustrated that Candace Owens directed the narrative about Charlie Kirk's death away from the left. So his goal is to defeat Candace in this debate and turn people's attention back to the radical left and radical trans agenda so that they can stoke violence and also state suppression surrounding that. That's his goal. He says he wants to crush the left, and so that's what frustrates him about Candace Owens doing this Charlie Kirk thing. Now, the fact that puts him in a position to essentially say, you know, you are crazy for thinking Israel is pulling these things off, which is essentially Candace Owens' theory that Israel somehow pulled the strings of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Tyler Robinson was a patsy. And even if that's crazy, whether you believe that or not, the problem for Andrew Wilson's position is even if he doesn't fully defend Israel or concedes a lot of ground there, trying to make the argument that they are not responsible for Charlie Kirk's death, or that they couldn't be, or that it's crazy to think that, is not going to fly very well with this mixed audience that they're going for. So I think ultimately Candace is going to win out because she doesn't really care about what the facts of this are. She pretends to, and she might have a lot of details to kind of pull up, but I think he's ultimately going to make the stronger case. The problem, though, is that Israel is a stronger issue, both on the right and the left. And so Candace Owens is going to ride a lot of support purely because of that. And while I think Andrew Wilson is more correct, that it is more sane to say not only Tyler Robinson probably killed Charlie Kirk, but also going after Erica Kirk in the way Candace Owens has done is like batshit insane. I still think Candace Owens has taken the discourse in the right direction by not only diverting attention away from the left in Charlie Kirk's death, which really wasn't at fault in any meaningful way, in any broader way, but also directing a lot of people's attention to Israel. And I think that has been a major dam break on the right that has turned a lot of people's main issue, or at least their main visualization of politics, into this idea that we are, you know, cucked to Israel or something. Certainly on the right, that's like the meta. And people like Andrew Wilson want to wrestle that away and kind of reverse that momentum, which is going to simply be impossible for them to do. How that's going to tie into this Israel debate, I don't know, but PBD being the host of it is definitely going to be an aspect of it. As far as Joe Rogan potentially hosting it, I mean, you really see the opportunism there. And this guy, you know, is friends with this Andrew Wilson dude, like I said, has never challenged him on his open, virulent misogyny. And this is a guy who clearly has fascist intentions. If you say you want to crush the left permanently and eradicate it, then that means you're a fascist. That means that you want to institute fascism. And ideologically, Joe Rogan is so far gone that he doesn't see it that way anymore. And he also sees that this is a seminal conversation on the right. And so he wants to be the host of it. He wants to be the one that takes the credit for that. I also think he's smart enough brand-wise that he knows he shouldn't travel too far away from Texas, even though he was willing to do that in the case of Trump, I believe. He was willing to go to the White House for a podcast there, ended up not doing that. And in many cases, it seems like he has refused to do like a mobile version of the Joe Rogan experience because he feels, I would assume, that it's more powerful brand wise for like him to control the room and be in that studio space that he's always in. So Candace Owens, predictably decides she doesn't want to do that. It's always that with these debate grifters. They're like, no, only if you say this, only if you do that. I'm surprised Candace even accepted this at all. Probably just because she got offered and paid so much money for it. And we'll see if things fall apart at this point. So here is what Andrew Wilson had to say in this creepy video he made about it. This is his recounting of the current situation, and again, where he says that, these terms were so unfair to him, but he accepted it anyway.
Let me give everyone an update of exactly where we are. A few weeks ago, Brian Atlas, a friend of mine who runs the Whatever podcast, offered up $100,000 for Candace Owens to debate with me about the murder of Charlie Kirk on his platform. He eventually raised it to $150,000, to which I said I would match it if we could actually debate on neutral ground. I expressed this story recently on the Joe Rogan podcast. Candace and her fans' reactions were volatile, to say the least. She issued a strange counter that I needed to pay her $500,000 and that TPUSA needed to, quote, claim me. Now, I don't work for TPUSA, so I couldn't grant that concession, as it would have been a lie. We entered into negotiations, and during those negotiations, Joe Rogan contacted us both, asking to host our debate. This is perhaps something you guys don't know. Obviously, I thought that changed everything, as that would guarantee the biggest platform for both of us to make our case on neutral ground. Unsurprisingly to me, Candace Owens declined. No control, you see. She insisted it be at her home still, even after Rogan said he would come in on his off day to do the debate, and I would still give her the $300,000. You would think if she was actually trying to change the minds of normies and reach a new audience, that's where she would go, but sadly, no. After many rounds of negotiations and a new moderator stepping in who assures us it'll be fair, we came to an agreement. I went ahead and sent the $300,000, and it has been confirmed by her staff and to us that it has been sent.
Yeah, so this guy really makes my skin crawl. I blame Jordan Peterson for coining this sort of like dark conservative aesthetic, this like very self-serious, I am a menace type of thing. I honestly don't think it works very well. And like I said, this guy just doesn't really have the charisma to pull it off. The OG grifters like Jordan Peterson or Candace Owens leaned a lot more heavily on that. And this guy's approach is much more like debate tactics. I'm going to debate you on every point. So it should be interesting to watch if it does happen with Candace. I don't put it past her to try to find some way to wiggle out of it. It seems like they're trying to make this so public that it's impossible for her to do that. It's a shame that we didn't get to see it on the Joe Rogan Experience, just to show what a right-wing smorgasbord that has become. But I guess having PBD kind of stumble his way through moderating the debate will be just as good. So I would say that this probably wouldn't happen except for the fact that she supposedly already got paid. So it would be pretty interesting if she backs out now, but she might. I mean, she swears she believes all this stuff. I think she convinces herself to believe it. I don't think that she comes or arrives to these conclusions based on any type of real internal logic. I think it's more like she knows how to take a profitable position, and she knows that the way to make it profitable is to keep doubling down on it over and over again. And that's how she's able to speak with this sort of persuasive cadence. So while Andrew Wilson is going to make better points in debating her, I think she very well might come off more convincing or be able to utilize the fact that he is going to end up in the position of defending Israel to make him look like the loser in the debate. And so I think that's possible that she'll do that. But either way, her audience is probably going to walk away entertained. So the last thing I want to mention here before I want to wrap it up is these primary results from last night. So the big headline is that Francesca Hong did not win her primary in Wisconsin. That was a primary for the Democratic side of the governor's race. So she did not win. In the past couple weeks, the polling has emerged that she was up like 40 points over everybody else in the race, including David Crowley, who had previously dropped out because they wanted to push other candidates against Hong. Then he dropped back into the race and all of a sudden had enough support to win, just barely, just by a hair, less than Abdul El Sayed won against Haley Stevens. So you're seeing some really close races in these Democratic primaries with a ton of turnout. That's a very interesting aspect of this, is that the opposition to these socialist candidates is pretty strong within the Democratic Party, but overall you're getting like historic turnout in some cases on both sides. Both candidates are getting more votes than have ever been gotten in some of these races. It's pretty impressive, and that is where the socialists are leading the charge in terms of unexpected turnout, although Francesca definitely did not do as well as the polling was saying she was going to do, not only overall but in certain districts. She simply underperformed. So a lot of people are saying that that's because she wasn't running TV ads. Her team had come out in the recent days saying that they weren't as focused on TV ads. Seems like that was a mistake because she lost in a lot of rural areas, and the areas that are less tied to those cable news channels are the ones that did turn out for her, but she missed some of those crucial rural areas, which are still watching those television sets, man. And so it seems like the lesson here is anybody who is seriously trying to run, especially in some of these swing states, needs to utilize those ads, because especially as the right-wing backlash to scary socialism crops up even in the Democratic Party, you know, they're hitting those messages hard with the ads. So these Democratic and Republican voters in rural areas and adjacent to city areas, suburban areas, they're getting hit hard with this messaging about Francesca Hong hates Thanksgiving and wants to do away with Thanksgiving. So there needs to be a robust strategy to combat that on the airwaves, and also to be really sharp when it comes to answering to some of those questions. That being said, I think there are some people on the left in the commentary space who really overly boosted negative aspects of Francesca in these final days, or, you know, kind of boosted these videos about her talking about Thanksgiving a few years ago or some shit. Like, who cares? And it seems like it was a non-issue that was made into an issue. And while the right certainly has a certain amount of ability to do that, sometimes you can see that they do it with a little bit of assistance from the left. And this would be a case, I think, of that. You got people all of a sudden talking about like woke 1 versus woke 2. You had AOC going on the news talking about that. She never offered an endorsement to Francesca Hong. Neither did Bernie Sanders. Some people are saying that they should have, because that would have taken her over the edge. You could also argue that they saw that she was kind of a weaker candidate because she was vulnerable on some of these overly woke attacks. I think it's definitely true that some of that rhetoric, you know, seems a little silly in hindsight or doesn't work in the context of these races. I also think, though, the number one thing is that you got to stand on what you've said, and you've got to come across strong. And people, I think, will get on board with someone who seems like they believe in something and is giving good answers to questions and is focusing on the most important issues. So the fact that some of us on the left let the narrative become about woke 1 versus woke 2, whatever the fuck that means, rather than Francesca Hong's actual platform or like data centers. David Crowley is hedging on this issue of data centers. Francesca Hong is running on a data center moratorium. So, I mean, that should be decisive, especially in those rural areas. That's a major failure on our part, but also on her campaign's part, to not make the entire conversation about that. And I think some people get lost in some of these primary elections. Like, it's good that there's a lot more attention on this stuff, but I think people should maybe like take a little bit of a step back from the play-by-play, especially like as the votes being counted. You know, I just see a lot of people getting themselves very worked up about results in certain counties and things going differently than they thought, what the polling said, what it didn't say. And the truth is, you know, the ground game, the knocking, and trying to help the campaigns in any way is really where the focus should be. And then, you know, once the votes are cast, you kind of just got to wait to see what happens. So I don't know. I think people should like not get their blood pressure up about this stuff. It was also a really good night. There were socialist candidates that won in many cases, local districts, as well as beating well-known national Democratic incumbents. So it wasn't an overall loss. It seems like, you know, some of the attention that gets brought at the last minute to some of these races ends up being a liability to these progressive candidates, because once the Fox News is able to, you know, take things out of context or brand you as some kind of crazy zany person rather than someone running on a serious platform, then it kind of runs away. We don't have the infrastructure to combat that yet. So some of these sleeper candidates seem to be doing better. We'll see how that dynamic continues. Just because she lost does not mean that the momentum is over, but it means that we're up against a lot against these incumbents and these more establishment candidates, and the fight continues.
I'm in the pocket, and they know they can't slow it, can't stop shit. How the game so cold, so toxic, can't drop cause they're in somebody's